So this is a short lecture regarding handling financial assets and retirement planning in Israel. So,
recording in progress.
If someone has finds running real estate very tiring, and although there is quite a lot of exempts regarding residential real estate rent. So what I propose, and I've learned accountancy, and I actually I got a very high grade, and I found evaluating companies and financial instruments to be very interesting. And I actually got all the points at the bar exam in financial instruments. Although many of the financial instruments, like bonds, are not very relevant because their yield is not as high. But we are now gone into inflation times. Although in most of the world it's going down, in Israel it still exists more or less, and you can get in 2024 you can get quite reasonable rates. The stock market, which I mean the stock market, I mean the global stock market, the S&P, the worldwide economy has an average yield of about 6 or 7%, depends on the if you're taxed and the rate taxes. But that's the average. You will have a roller coaster. So if a person has what I shall call fat of money, and he doesn't need the liquidity and to withdraw the money straight away, it's usually best to put in the at least in a very strong market. Because the yield at any time, we checked it, if you bought in New York, if you bought in Tel Aviv, in the last 100 years, real estate, and compare it to the S&P 500, the S&P 500 has done better. So what's the S&P 500? It's S&P and other rating agencies. It's like doing evaluation of a company by the most professional people. They have their criteria, and it's actually a bit like a prophecy that creates itself, because if you pass the bar to get into the S&P 500, which is the strongest companies in the world, or the leaders in the world, therefore you will become a bit of a monopoly. Okay, you have a big influence as a company. So that's a very, and even Buffett said that the S&P 500 outbeat him and his investments. At this time, I'm not so sure, but I mean the Russell was beaten, but Russell is the small cap. It's the smallest companies, and it was beaten very, very hard. And it is, in my opinion, not a bad time, because it's a recovery, and it might be, it's quite beaten up because small companies have a problem to raise money, and therefore they are hit by a high interest. Inflation and interest are intertwined. I mean, they usually, the Federal Reserve or the main central bank of a state, will fight the inflation by putting a higher interest rate. So, for instance, in Ukraine or in Turkey, or it might be in Argentina, I'm not so sure, you have a 10% to a 15% rate deposit, because the currency is beaten down, and you won't win a lot, because if you offset the inflation, your income is not so high. But today in Israel, you have a higher rate where they give you for deposit, so it keeps safe for the money. Some people believe in metals or gold as a haven for the value of money. It's very hard to buy it in the stock market in Israel. I do believe that, it's a limited resource, gold, and if it has its uses, it should be. But I'm not a geologist, and I don't know. If you have replacements for other. You can take lithium, or which is for batteries and electric batteries, but you all the time have to be updated. If they have, if they found different resources, are they going out to the moon? It's a thing of a demand and a supply. But the most, the basic thing for a person, if he wants to cut his fees, and that's the thing that you can actually have some control on and over, and that's the Buffett advice. You want to cut the fees. You don't want the banks to hit you and trade all day. You can just say, I'm going to put in the S&P 500. It's that's my control thing. If I have a good deposit, you can go, but also it's like a day trader. If you're, it's called a Keren Kaspit. If you have a fund which has, indexed, but that you need a stock, you need to run it. So I suggest for a person